In 2016, a Japanese biologist won the Nobel Prize in medicine for discovering how your cells eat themselves. That is not a figure of speech. Right now, inside you, there is a process that identifies damaged parts of a cell, wraps them in a membrane, drags them to a recycling center, and dismantles them into raw material that gets used to build something new. The process is called autophagy, and the word means, quite literally, self-eating. Now here is where almost every video you have seen about this goes wrong. You have probably been told that autophagy is a cancer killer, and that you switch it on by fasting for 3 days, and that this is the secret nobody is telling you. 2 of those 3 things are misleading, and one of them is the opposite of what the research actually shows. So in the next 15 minutes, I am going to walk you through what autophagy genuinely is, 5 things that are shown to influence it that have nothing to do with extreme fasting, and then the part that gets left out of every single one of these videos, which is the reason serious cancer researchers are far more careful about this than the internet is. If you want the version of this with the caveats left in, subscribe, because that is the entire point of this channel, and comment below which of the 5 you already do without realizing it. I read them, and they shape what gets made next. Let us start with what is actually happening in there. Your cells are full of things that break. Proteins fold incorrectly. Mitochondria, which are the small structures that produce your energy, become damaged and start leaking reactive molecules. Bits of cellular machinery wear out. None of this is unusual. It is the ordinary consequence of being alive and running chemistry at body temperature every second of every day. So your cells need a way to deal with the debris, and autophagy is that way. A membrane forms around the damaged material, seals it into a bubble, and delivers it to a structure called the lysosome, which is essentially the cell's demolition yard. Enzymes break the contents down into amino acids and fatty acids and other basic components, and those components get released back into the cell to be reused. It is not just disposal, it is recycling, and under conditions of scarcity, it is also a survival mechanism, because a cell that can break down its own non-essential parts can keep the essential parts running for longer. Yoshinori Osumi worked out the genetics of how this happens using yeast, and that work is what the Nobel Committee recognized in 2016. Since then, the field has expanded enormously, and autophagy now turns up in research on aging, neurodegeneration, immunity, metabolic disease, and yes, cancer. But how it turns up in cancer research is a great deal more complicated than you have been told, and I am going to come back to that properly at the end. The important mechanical point is this. Autophagy is not a switch that is either on or off. It runs continuously at a baseline level in most tissues, and that baseline goes up or down in response to what your cells are sensing. The main sensor involved is a protein complex called mTOR. When mTOR detects plentiful nutrients, particularly amino acids from protein, it signals the cell to grow and build, and it suppresses autophagy, because there is no reason to recycle when raw materials are abundant. When nutrients are scarce, mTOR activity falls and autophagy increases. A second sensor called a MPK works in the opposite direction, responding to low cellular energy and pushing autophagy up. So the honest way to describe this is not activating autophagy, as though you are flipping a switch. It is influencing the balance between building and recycling, and the interventions below are ones with published evidence that they shift that balance. What none of them are is a treatment, and I want that clear before we go any further. Nothing in this video prevents, treats, or cures any disease, and if you have a diagnosis or a family history that worries you, that conversation belongs with your doctor and not with a video. The first one is protein cycling. Most people who have heard anything about autophagy have heard about fasting, and fasting does reduce mTOR signaling, mostly through lowering insulin and available nutrients. But protein specifically is one of the strongest direct inputs into mTOR, and that pathway gets far less attention than total calories do. Amino acids, particularly leucine, are sensed directly by the mTOR complex. High availability means growth signaling goes up and autophagy goes down. Lower availability means the reverse. What some researchers have explored is whether varying protein intake, rather than restricting it permanently, produces a useful pattern of these signals. And that word varying matters enormously for the audience watching this. If you are over 60, permanently low protein is a genuinely bad idea, because muscle loss with age is one of the strongest predictors of losing independence, and older adults need more protein per meal to trigger muscle synthesis, not less. So if this idea appeals to you, the version that makes sense is 1 lower protein day, with adequate protein on the other days, rather than sustained restriction. Vegetables, fruit, whole grains, legumes on the lighter day. And if you are older, underweight, recovering from illness or surgery, pregnant, or managing kidney disease, this is one to ask about rather than one to try, because in every one of those situations, the calculation changes completely. The second one is heat exposure. When body temperature rises significantly, cells mount what is called the heat shock response. Proteins called heat shock proteins are produced, and their job is to stabilize other proteins that are starting to unfold under thermal stress, and to help clear the ones that are too far gone. That clearance overlaps with autophagy pathways, and there is laboratory evidence connecting heat stress to increased autophagic activity. Now, the study that always gets cited here is a Finnish one, and I want to represent it accurately because it usually is not. Researchers followed 2,315 middle-aged Finnish men for around 20 years and found that those who used a sauna 4 to 7 times a week had roughly 40% lower all-cause mortality compared with men who used one once a week. That is a real finding in a real journal. But there are 3 things about it that rarely get mentioned. It was a cardiovascular study, and the strongest associations were with heart-related deaths. All the participants were men, all in Finland, in a culture where sauna use is lifelong and habitual. And it is observational, which means it can show an association, but cannot prove the sauna caused the outcome. People who sauna 4 times a week may differ from people who do not in 100 ways that are hard to fully adjust for. So the honest statement is that regular sauna use is associated with better cardiovascular outcomes in that population. And heat stress does influence cellular stress responses, including autophagy. The typical pattern in that research was 15 to 20 minutes at around 80 to 100 degrees Celsius. And a genuine caution, because this one matters. Heat exposure puts real load on the cardiovascular system. If you have heart disease, low blood pressure, are pregnant, or take medication that affects blood pressure or fluid balance, ask your doctor before starting. And never combine sauna use with alcohol. The third is a pair of compounds found in ordinary food. And this is where the science is genuinely interesting, and also where the marketing is at its worst. The first is spermidine, a compound found in wheat germ, mushrooms, aged cheese, legumes, soybeans, and green peas. In laboratory work, spermidine has been shown to induce autophagy through a mechanism involving inhibition of certain enzymes that normally suppress it. The human evidence usually quoted is the Brunex study, which followed 829 adults in northern Italy for 20 years and found that higher dietary spermidine intake was associated with lower all-cause mortality. Note that phrase, all-cause, not cancer specifically. And a much larger analysis in a separate cohort of over 29,000 people did not find the same relationship, which is exactly the kind of thing that gets left out when a finding is being sold to you. The second compound is urolithin A, which your gut bacteria produce from precursors found in pomegranates, walnuts, raspberries, and other berries. Urolithin A has been studied for its effect on mitophagy, the specific clearing of damaged mitochondria, and there is early human trial data on muscle function. There is one detail here that almost never gets mentioned. Not everybody produces urolithin A. It depends on your gut microbiome composition, and a substantial proportion of people do not convert the precursors efficiently at all. So the sensible position on both of these is simple. The foods themselves are good foods for other well-established reasons, and eating more mushrooms, legumes, whole grains, walnuts, and berries is a defensible thing to do regardless of what any of this turns out to mean. The supplements are a different question entirely. They are expensive, and the human evidence is not remotely where the marketing implies it is. If you are still with me, subscribe before the last section, because the final part of this video is the part the other videos on this topic leave out, and it is the part that actually matters. The fourth is cold exposure. Cold works through a different route than heat. Cold triggers a release of norepinephrine, which among other effects activates a MPK, the low-energy sensor that pushes autophagy up and dampens mTOR signaling. There is also research on cold exposure and immune cell mobilization, though how much that translates into meaningful long-term outcomes in humans is not settled. The practical version people use is ending a shower with 1 to 2 minutes of genuinely cold water, which is far more sustainable than trying to organize ice baths. Consistency appears to matter more than intensity, and the caution here is the same shape as the heat one and just as serious. Cold water immersion causes a sharp rise in blood pressure and heart rate in the first moments of exposure. If you have any cardiovascular condition, high blood pressure, or a heart rhythm problem, this is not a trivial thing to start doing because you saw it in a video. Ask your doctor, and never do cold immersion alone in open water. The fifth is the one that is least exciting and best supported, which is sleep. Autophagy in several tissues, including the brain, appears to run at higher rates during sleep, and it follows a circadian pattern, meaning it is tied to your internal 24-hour clock rather than simply to how tired you are. This is why irregular sleep timing may matter beyond just total hours. On the health outcomes side, the evidence linking circadian disruption to cancer risk is unusually strong for this kind of research, and it comes from an unusually credible place. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, which is the World Health Organization body that assesses carcinogens, has classified night shift work involving circadian disruption as probably carcinogenic to humans. That is a formal designation from the same body that classifies every other suspected carcinogen, and it is based largely on studies of shift workers, particularly nurses. So of everything in this video, this is the one where the evidence is strongest and the mechanism is least dependent on speculation. and the practical version costs nothing. Go to bed and get up within roughly the same 45-minute window every day, including weekends, because the consistency of timing is what anchors the rhythm. Get daylight into your eyes early. Keep the evening dim. That is the whole intervention, and it is the one I would prioritize over every other item on this list. Now, the part I promised, and the reason this video exists. There are two claims made constantly about autophagy that need correcting. The first is the fasting claim. You will hear that you need 72 hours of fasting to activate autophagy, usually stated with a precision that the underlying research does not support. Most of the specific timing figures circulating online come from animal studies, and mice metabolize at a dramatically faster rate than humans, so their timelines do not transfer. Measuring autophagy directly in living human tissue is difficult, which is exactly why confident hour-by-hour claims should make you suspicious. What is reasonably supported is that autophagy responds to a range of inputs, and that regular moderate exposure across several of them is a more sensible approach than occasional extreme measures, particularly for anybody over 60, for whom prolonged fasting carries real risks around muscle loss, blood pressure, and medication timing. The second correction is much more important, and it is the one that no video on this subject seems willing to say out loud. Autophagy is not simply anti-cancer. Its relationship with cancer is genuinely dual, and this is well established in the research literature rather than being a fringe position. In healthy tissue, autophagy appears to be protective. By clearing damaged proteins and dysfunctional mitochondria, it reduces the accumulated cellular damage that can contribute to a cell turning abnormal in the first place. That is the tumor-suppressing side, and it is real. But once a tumor is established, the same process can work in the tumor's favor. Cancer cells inside a growing tumor are frequently stressed, short of oxygen and nutrients, and autophagy is a survival mechanism under exactly those conditions. Some tumors use it to endure that stress, and there is research on autophagy contributing to resistance against certain cancer treatments. This is not a hypothetical concern. There are clinical trials specifically investigating autophagy inhibitors as cancer therapies, which is to say, drugs designed to block this process in people who have cancer. Both directions are being studied because the effect depends on context, on the type of cancer, and on what stage it is at. So what does that mean for you practically? It means that a video telling you to maximize autophagy in order to fight cancer is not giving you the full picture. And if you have an existing cancer diagnosis, none of the practices in this video should be started without talking to your oncology team, because fasting, heat, cold, and supplements can all interact with treatment. It also means that the reasonable version of this whole topic is much less dramatic and much more useful. The interventions here, sleep regularity, varied protein intake, whole foods rich in these compounds, and sensible heat or cold exposure are all reasonable things for general health, supported to varying degrees, and none of them are a shield against disease. And on that, one last number because it is the honest closing point. A 2024 analysis led by American Cancer Society researchers found that around 40% of cancer cases and close to half of cancer deaths in American adults over 30 were attributable to modifiable risk factors. That is a genuinely encouraging figure. But look at what those factors actually were. Cigarette smoking accounted for nearly 20% of cases and 30% of deaths, by a wide margin the largest single contributor. Then excess body weight, alcohol, ultraviolet exposure, physical inactivity, diet, and infections including HPV and hepatitis B, both of which have vaccines. Not one item on that list is autophagy. So if somebody wants the highest impact things available to them, they are not exotic. Do not smoke, get vaccinated, watch alcohol, stay active, manage weight, use sun protection. Attend your screenings because catching something early is worth more than every biohack combined. Everything in this video sits on top of that foundation. It does not replace it, and anybody suggesting otherwise is selling you something. That is the whole picture, including the parts that are inconvenient. Subscribe if you want health information with the caveats left in rather than removed, because the removing is what makes this stuff sound so much more certain than it is. And tell me in the comments which of the 5 you already do without thinking about it. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.